and I want to bring in my guests to go into it because it is completely disastrous what some of these tiny countries are trying to do. Daniel Lazare, my man, Daniel Lazare, he's an independent journalist, author, best known as a critic of the U.S. Constitution, American politics, government, and social policy in general. He has written several books: First Republic, Velvet Coup, America's Undeclared War. Daniel, welcome to the show, man. You doing okay today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. A bit disturbed by what tiny countries, Estonia, for one, is trying to do, stuff that Macron is saying. But just for the audience may not know this. So Estonia has been trying to capture Russian ships. Now, in this one particular thing, Russia has started to guard those ships. And there was rumors that Russia was sending out their own war vessels in order to escort their ships. This took place, I believe it was yesterday, where Estonia is literally in open waters, by the way. These are not in Estonian waters. These are open waters, trying to get this ship to come in to their port. Basically, they're trying to steal the ship, to pirate the ship. The only thing that stopped it was because of a Russian fighter aircraft flying over, making it clear, basically, we will destroy you if you try to go after the ship, if you try to actually take the ship. The ship ignored the demands. It kept going. At one point, apparently, they were trying to board the ship. The ship wouldn't allow it. And when the Russian fighter craft came in, they backed off. They are, man, if this is not brinksmanship, I don't know what is. Daniel, what is going on with this? This seems insane to me.
Yeah, it's very bad. Essentially, NATO is making tentative stabs at imposing a naval blockade on Russia. Estonia, which by the way has less than 1.4 million people. That's less than the population of Manhattan.
I know.
Is part of NATO, and at NATO's behest, they have made certain efforts at cutting off maritime traffic to Russia via the Baltic, and so they tried to halt this ship, this oil tanker. Which is neutrally flagged, and Russia interceded, sent a fighter jet to make known its displeasure and to threaten repercussions if Estonia went ahead with this attempted interception. But NATO is playing a very dangerous game. Imposing a naval blockade is
act of war.
Act of war, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me of the naval blockade that Egypt imposed on the Gulf of Aqaba in 1967, which triggered the 6-Day War. So they shouldn't do that. They shouldn't go there. Their policy is failing. It's a no-win situation that can only lead to a serious confrontation.
By the way, if Russia attacked that ship, Article 5 wouldn't necessarily apply. Estonia was the problem. I mean, now mind you, NATO might have ignored that and just still went with it, but that would have been Estonia attacking a ship in open waters, not Russia attacking a NATO country.
Well, I mean, if NATO had attacked Estonia, you mean? I mean, if Russia had attacked
that ship,
Estonia, right? The ship trying to cut off the oil tanker.
Exactly.
No, it would escalate very rapidly and very dangerously.
Yes.
And it's very foolish because these oil sanctions aren't working. They really can't work. So they're an empty gesture whose only purpose is to raise military tension. Now, the war in the Ukraine is turning into a disaster for everybody. It's a trap, and from which no one can escape.
That's what it seems like that way at this point, doesn't it?
Yeah, not the Ukraine, not NATO, not the U.S., and not Russia. I mean, it's a black hole that is dragging the rest of the world in. This is how wars spread, how they deepen, how they fester, and how they infest the surrounding neighborhood.
I want to show you another clip. Speaking of how it drags other countries into it, Europe clearly doesn't want the war to stop, and I have my own reason for that. In fact, before I even show this clip, I want to get your take on it. From my point of view, Europe doesn't really care about Ukraine any more than the U.S. cares about Ukraine. And from Europe's point of view, the United States wants Europe to increase its military stockpiles. They want them to try to build up their military industries. We want to move to the Pacific. So we want to deal with China and say, okay, we want to freeze the conflict. We want to put European troops into whatever's left of Ukraine. And while we deal with China, we want you all to effectively deal with Russia, meaning global domination, with the United States handing off responsibilities in kind of the way that the Roman Empire, as it was collapsing, started bringing in other groups and other mercenaries and whatnot, because they couldn't necessarily do it on their own. They had expanded too much. Pursuant to this, Macron comes out and says the quiet part out loud. Again, all of this stuff kills any negotiation or deal that could take place. He is, I'm not going to entire political, I'm just showing it, but he is saying in this clip that we can't leave Ukraine alone since it will not join NATO. We are offering alternate guarantees. He wants to place troops at strategic points in Ukraine. And so it's like Russia's already said, this is a deal breaker. Anybody that is going into Ukraine is fair game, including Europe, if that's indeed what you're going to do. And yet you have Macron saying this aloud, even countering at one point saying, hey, maybe we should put nukes in Ukraine since the United States doesn't want to do it.
It's an example of how this is a no-win, all-lose situation. The war in the Ukraine is frozen. Russia's progress appears to have stalled. Drones are
Wait a minute, Daniel. That is not true. Russia has literally built 2 additional militaries, one at the border of Finland and another one reserved with all new equipment. They've been pushing and taking territory day after day. I've been following the battleground stats each day. Every day there's another village that falls. Every day there's a reason that Zelensky is screaming for 30-day ceasefire, is because Russia's getting 30,000 people a month who's volunteering, whereas they're dragging people off the streets, people coming out of stores, people with their dogs, just throwing them in the vans. There's a clear difference in tenor between these two powers.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that. But however, I do think it's true that Russia's advances have slowed, and that I think that drone warfare is devastatingly effective. Drones are the most powerful military revolution since the invention of the AK-47 back in 1946.
It's a new method of warfare.
The new method of warfare is devastatingly effective, very difficult to counter, and I think my impression is that Russian advances are decelerating. But that just means that the more frozen, the more those lines harden, the plainer it becomes that there can be absolutely no peace without territorial concessions on the part of the Ukraine. Yeah. That is simply a fact. And that is a fact that no one in the West wants to face. And a fact that Zelensky really can't face, because if he does agree to that even in principle, the Azov battalion will hang him from the nearest lamppost.
It will
string him up. And and then with a sign around his neck saying "Death to Jews," because Azov is a neo-Nazi battalion. Now, but Ukraine is never going to get the Crimea back. I mean, this is just painfully obvious. It's never going to get Donetsk and Luhansk back either. So this should be the starting point for negotiations, but it's one the West can't face. So therefore, this war will fester for a long time. the war, there's probably peace talks or peace talk progress has actually regressed since Trump took office. Both sides' positions have hardened. So not only has Trump made no progress in bringing peace to that area, he's actually losing ground.
What do you think of him, by the way, in regard? Do you think he legit wants a peace deal? Because the peace deal he's been offering is absurd. Like the notion that the U.S. is going to occupy Zaporozhye nuclear power plant when it's, from Russia's point of view, part of the Russian Federation is outrageous. Like some of the, I don't know who is advising him. I don't know who is giving him advice on this, but the stuff that he's asked for is outrageous. The Kellogg plan, for example, where Kellogg is like, yeah, we're going to have European troops, effectively NATO troops, in Ukraine, which is, as Napoleon Part 2 has just said, is a de facto NATO. What he is putting forward is outrageous, considering from the Russian point of view, Ukraine will collapse if we keep going. We're just going to keep attriting them away until the point where the military collapses. That's what we're going to do. That's our plan.
Well, after 100 days, I think we're all getting a little more used to Donald Trump. It's like being locked in a bad marriage, and we're starting to be able to read his mind, and no one knows what his real positions are. Yeah. Yes, I do believe that Trump would like to end the war. I really do. So he could concentrate on other matters. I think Trump recognizes this war as a no-win proposition. He wants to get out. I think he feels a great deal of sympathy for Putin, politically and ideologically, and even personally. And I think that he definitely would like to settle this war. But he's making no progress. The funny thing is that I don't think Trump likes war. I mean, he just finished bombing the Houthis for 30 days, got nowhere, lost a bunch of MQ-9 Reaper drones, lost 2 F-18 Super Hornets, which got washed overboard. And then at the end of it, he says, okay, I declare, victory, let's get out. So I don't think he really wants war. I don't think Trump really is all about war. Trump is all about making deals and securing the U.S. and also making private deals that are turning the Trump brand into the most successful brand in the history of the world. And Trump wants to rake in money personally. I mean, this is corruption raised to a new dimension.
Yeah, the crypto thing, it's just an outright scam. Like the crypto, oh man, the money that his kids are making. And then it's like, yeah, I'm going to invest in crypto and I'm going to now bring the US government into crypto to stabilize the crypto market. So, okay, so you're now investing into something and then you're using the US government to effectively stabilize it to make sure the price stays high. Okay, that is corruption on a whole other level that we're just unaccustomed to, right? I don't know. I think Trump is amoral, to be honest. The Nasrallah thing was humiliating. As you point out, the ship nearly got hit by either drones or missiles coming from Yemen. Apparently, an F-35 nearly got shot off the sky. The ship, as it was banking through 2 Super Hornets off of the aircraft, some pilots had to bail out because they weren't able to get caught. I mean, when the plane is coming onto the landing, it was a mess. They were never able to get air superiority. Apparently, they knocked out like 20-something Reaper drones out the sky. They spent over $1 billion in a month and got nothing. And as you point out, Trump at one point says, okay, we're done. See, I don't know if it's his threshold for pain, if it's that, like, what happens if they actually hit the aircraft carrier? Or what happens if they do knock an F-35 out the sky? And he doesn't want to deal with that reality, considering how close it was.
I think you're totally right. I think you're totally correct. I don't. Trump does not want to see an aircraft carrier go down on his watch because imagine what would happen if it did.
Yeah.
I mean, he would find himself in a major war with the Houthis, and you don't want to mess with the Houthis. They have been at war since 2015, ever since MBS Mohammed bin Salman declared war on them, and then left for a 1 week vacation in the Maldives, and the U.S. State Department couldn't even get in contact with them. They were going crazy. They had no idea why their close ally was declaring war on Yemen, and they couldn't even get MBS on the phone.
Wait, I didn't know that, by the way. You said because I remember, like, the New York Times was talking about Obama effectively greenlighting it. Obama didn't want MBS to intrude and put in the deal with Iran. And so Obama just greenlit the war. Saudis was like, it's going to be easy. It's going to be a cakewalk. They just banned the rebels. And Obama was like, I don't believe him. And he greenlit it anyway. I did not know, though, that he went on vacation immediately after declaring war.
Yeah, and when he got back from vacation, Antony Blinken flew to Riyadh to give him a bear hug and say, yes, it's okay, we're behind you, don't worry. So it's okay. And that war would never have proceeded without U.S. and British technical assistance. So for 10 years, I think it was April. I think just past the 10th anniversary. Yeah. And the Houthis have suffered incredibly. I mean, the Houthis are the poorest country in the Middle East, being attacked by the richest country in the Middle East, and they have taken an incredible pounding, but they've gotten very good at this. Yeah. The Yemen's a very mountainous country. The geography is really difficult, and there are lots of hiding places, and they've gotten excellent at this kind of warfare. So. So if an aircraft carrier had gone down, I mean, Trump would be tearing his hair out. Yeah. He'd be forced into a serious war, and the last place he wants to have a serious war. So it would have been a disaster. So Trump got out. But as I said before, I don't really think Trump wants war. Mm-hmm. Joe Biden wanted war. Joe Biden was looking for a fight. But I don't think Trump is.
But it seems like he's looking for a fight in Iran. I mean, like, I have two versions in my head, and I don't know which one is entirely true. And so I never really take a hard stance on one or the other when I'm talking to the audience. I kind of present both, even though I'm cynical of these negotiations. Donald Trump started off the negotiations. Pezeshkian was open to negotiations. Even in the very beginning, the Ayatollah was more of a hard ass about it because the Ayatollah was there when they blew off the JCPOA, when Donald Trump did. And so Pezeshkian was like, I'm open for a deal. However, I'm amending my position with the Ayatollah. Basically, whatever the Ayatollah wants, that's where I'm at. Trump, as opposed to accepting the deal that they were willing to have, meaning negotiation, he comes in and says, I'm going to bomb you. I'm going to bomb you. You better accept my deal. I'm going to bomb you. If you don't come to a deal, I'm going to bomb you. Iran are nice people, but we're going to bomb you. And then initially, when Witkoff goes, people thought, okay, well, Witkoff is a realist. He's not an ideologue. He's not Rubio. He's not a Zionist. So maybe this is an honest arbitration. Maybe Trump actually does want a deal. And some of the reporting came out that said Iran was actually shocked because Joe Biden wasn't interested in a deal, whereas Trump seems to be interested. Witkoff comes back, sounds like Arghachi, the foreign minister of Iran, meaning it sounds like they're on the same page. We're going to get rid of the amount. We're going to lower our enrichment threshold, all of this stuff. Witkoff gets attacked and immediately switches up. Rubio starts to talk more, saying we need like the Libyan model. They need to get rid of all of their enrichment. And even started tying it to, well, they're supporting terrorism in the region, so we also need them to stop supporting their regional allies. So, the U.S. is the only one who would support terrorists in the way that Donald Trump was congratulating that jihadist president in Syria yesterday. And so initially what started off as reasonable ended up being a maximalist demand that he knows in advance that Iran is never going to accept. The threats don't matter. They're not going to accept it. So I have a hard time with that. Because from my point of view, it's like, okay, well, if you're going in with something that you want, that you know the other side is never going to accept, then these negotiations aren't on the level. Just like when George Bush was negotiating with Iraq under this notion of, okay, we're trying to get rid of their weapons of mass destruction, which they didn't have. Well, this sounds like a very similar argument to me. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, weapons of mass destruction in Iran. We're going to negotiate with Iraq when really the negotiation, if you listen to Scott Ritter, and I think he's right, was done in order to provoke a war, not to stop one. And now you have Witkoff going over there, delivering a message of something that they're never going to accept in a very similar vein that George Bush did. How should I look at this? I mean,
I agree. It's very confusing. It's very confusing. I would argue that in January 1980, Zbig Brzezinski wrote what was called the Carter Doctrine, which essentially declared the entire Persian Gulf to be a crucial American resource. And so from that time on, the U.S. has been struggling for hegemony in the Gulf region. Mm-hmm. And Iran has been the great fly in the ointment from a U.S. point of view. Right. Because Iran is an alternative power structure, the U.S. sees it as an enemy, and it's the whole focus of its policy for 45 years has been to neutralize the so-called Iranian threat. Now, obviously, I don't regard Iran as I don't adopt such language by any means whatsoever. Right. Iran has a total right to self-determination, not to be menaced by the United States. And the U.S., what right does the U.S. have to lay claim to an oil resource, thousands and thousands of miles from U.S. borders? It's an absolute outrage. But the U.S. has been pursuing this policy since literally World War II, since FDR met with Ibn Saud in February 1945 in the Great Salt Lake off the Suez Canal. Yeah. So this is long-standing U.S. policy, a major part of U.S. foreign policy. And so what I think Trump is trying to do, if I hope I'm correct, is that he's trying to somehow push back on Iran to get Iran to defer to U.S. hegemony, and there's a lot of wiggle room in that formula. And he also wants Iran to reel in the Houthis, and it's not at all entirely clear that Iran can do that.
Exactly.
Right, and he wants Iran to reduce its nuclear stockpile, but Iran at this point, looks at North Korea and says, and starting to say, look, a nuclear weapon is the ultimate insurance policy against U.S. aggression. That's the difference between Iran and North Korea. North Korea, knows that the U.S. will never dare invade because of its nuclear arms. Yeah. And so what Trump is trying to push back, trying to make a deal, trying to somehow, which will expand U.S. control over this crucial region. And Israel has an interest in this as well, because Israel sees Iran as a threat. But Iran has lost crucial allies in Syria and in Lebanon. Yeah. And so the U.S. thinks that Iran has been weakened. Netanyahu kind of agrees, but meanwhile, the absolutely atrocious war in Gaza grinds on, where there's every indication that Netanyahu is imposing a Trumpian peace based on ethnic cleansing. Yes. And the Iranians, Jolani can go along with that in Syria, but Iran, for various regional reasons, finds that very difficult to accede to that horrendous outcome. Mm-hmm. So that's what this is, a very complicated three-way conflict that Trump is trying to negotiate his way through. But and if Trump succeeds, that just merely means that ethnic cleansing in Gaza will accelerate.
But Iran is given its deal, effectively saying, look, we will get rid of the amount of enrichment that we have. We are not going to stop enriching up to, but we will lower it down, I think to like 3% or 3.6%, whatever that number is, because we're using it for radioactive therapy and stuff like that in the nation. We will give our enriched uranium away to somewhere else. Effectively, a JCPOA 2.0
Yeah,
is what they're effectively saying.
absolutely.
The problem with that is Trump is saying, we want the Libyan model. We want you to get rid of even your ability to enrich, which again is a red line and was always going to be a red line. It was a red line from jump. And so if he is initiating what he is considered to be a red line, it seems like he's creating a context, even with the Houthi stuff, acting as if everything that the Houthis or Ansarullah does is synonymous with Iran. It sounds like the people who, let's say, are more darker on this, who are more cynical on this, is that you are creating a context by which to justify attacking Iran or working with Israel to do so, in the same way that George Bush created a context by which to attack Iraq. It doesn't matter if the rest of the world thinks it's nonsense. It's like, just because two people are arguing doesn't mean that one side is making any sense. It just means two people are arguing, right? It sounds like he's creating a context and a framework by which he can say, well, we tried to negotiate. Iran didn't want to negotiate, or at the very least, they didn't want to give us what we wanted. We tried to be reasonable. We said that they could have nuclear power. But what's built into you can have nuclear power is you can't refine it. You need to somehow get it from somewhere else. So you're no longer a sovereign country in regards to your affairs, which no country would accept. That's my issue with this. That's why I'm more cynical on this. And exactly what you just said, the US policy goes for decades, not just with Trump. Like, this didn't just start. You can look at Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya. All of these countries were fundamentally destroyed. It didn't matter, the president, whether they were Democrat or Republican. And now you have Trump in with one of the most Zionist, whack job administrations of the people around him that they've ever had, which is part of the reason that Netanyahu is like, we're doing this now. We're going for it all now. We're taking all of Gaza now. We're trying to take the West Bank now. We're doing it while Trump is in office right now. How can I not be cynical when I look at this?
Well, no, you're. I agree with you totally. I mean, I think you're the JCPOA 2.0 is spot on. I mean, Trump. The JCPOA was negotiated in January 2015, if memory serves. Trump walked away from it in May 2018, and now he's trying to bring it back. Yeah. And the JCPOA was doing its job. It was a treaty that was accomplishing what everybody who had a hand in it, wanted it to do.
Right.
But Trump backed away for no reason, and the reason he backed away, this is really, really important. Essentially, April 2015 saw a crisis break out, where the U.S. entered into this deal. I'm not sure when the formal signing was. I think it may have been a few months later, but the deal was announced in April 2015. The Saudis were furious because they thought they were being abandoned by the U.S. MBS had just taken over shortly before from his aged father, who's basically semi-comatose. So essentially, in return for the Saudis not raising a stink, Obama allowed them to do two things. One is he allowed them to transfer U.S.-made shoulder-carried anti-tank missiles to al-Qaeda forces at that time in southern Turkey, which they then used to invade the northern Syrian province of Idlib. That was Jolani's power base for years. And then he also allowed them to bomb Yemen. So paradoxically, peace with Iran actually led to an extension of war, if you can believe it.
Interesting.
So the U.S. greenlit the Al Qaeda takeover of Idlib and the Saudi assault on Yemen, which, by the way, is a Shiite country, mostly Shiite, and a different brand of Shiism from that in Iran, but still a form of Shiism. And so peace led to war, strangely enough. And we see the repercussions, 10 years later, where Idlib becomes the, Jolani's base, which he then uses to overthrow a greatly weakened Assad government and launch a pogrom against Alawites and Druze, just as we warned he would back in 2015. Yes, I wrote countless articles saying that. Saying the U.S. was allying with Al Qaeda and was promoting this kind of ethnic eradication, and sadly, I was vindicated. And the war in various forms has continued in Yemen. And if Trump wants to extend that ring of fire to Iran, he may wind up doing so. But I think that, as I said before, I think that Trump is loath to do that, because what happens? He'll bomb Iran. I guess what's in the back of the mind of the neocon establishment, who are trying to sort of maneuver Trump in their direction, is that U.S. and Israel will bomb Iran, and that will lead to the overthrow of the mullah's regime. And that's not impossible. That's not impossible.
Yeah, because I don't know what is in his mind. Because I can only look at what he does. And so it's like, he could very well not want a larger war. And other people have made the point of saying, yeah, he may not want that larger war, but he may think that he can get away with bombing without a larger war. And I don't think, you may be very well correct. In his mind, I don't want a larger war. He may think that. I want to stop these wars. But he also, I think presidents get trapped in their rhetoric. When you say stuff, that is a hell of a cliff to walk back from after spending 3 months saying you're going to bomb this place if they don't get the deal that you want. But the deal that you offer is something they can never accept. And then it's like, okay, so now what? You're on the pot. What do you do? Do you make that attack? Because people in your ear are saying, hey, they're not really going to hit you back. Or, hey, they're not as strong as you think they are. You couldn't even get air superiority over Yemen. Iran is a different animal. It's just shocking to me. I guess my feeling is you're right. I suspect, all things being equal, Trump can't stomach the consequences of a larger war. If you can't stomach the attack on Yemen, Lord knows you're not going to be able to stomach a large-scale fight in the Middle East. And I guess I'm stuck with this thing of maybe he doesn't believe that it would be a large-scale attack if he attacks.
Well, I think, yeah. I think that Trump does not want a large-scale war in the Middle East, but Trump wants, it's the Goldilocks solution. Doesn't want a little war, doesn't want a large war. He wants just the right war,
just right.
In which all the advantages accrue to the U.S. side. And I guess everybody wants that. That's the kind of war that everybody wants. But it's not easy to arrange, because wars have a way of growing on their own. Netanyahu wants a larger war. Netanyahu sees Iran as an existential threat, but Netanyahu so far is in a very advantageous position. He has eliminated Hezbollah. He has eliminated Assad. He wants to strike a real blow at Iran to force Iran to back off and perhaps tell the Houthis to back off, while he proceeds with the ethnic cleansing of Gaza and the complete and total elimination of Hamas as any kind of military threat. I think that Netanyahu's strategy is fairly clear. I think that Trump doesn't really have an idea what he's doing at all.
Do you believe in the rift between Trump and Netanyahu? Because I'll tell you two things. Um, I think people are misunderstanding the rift. I think just because Trump and Netanyahu might not like each other, or Trump doesn't like Netanyahu, that has nothing to do with Trump and Israel. I think those are different things. And I remember there's this clip where Trump was talking about Israel and talking about Palestine. And he says initially he believed that it was the Palestinians that didn't want a deal. And he said he went to talk to Mahmoud Abbas. He said he came across very fatherly to me. He says, and I realized when talking to him that they do want a deal. He said he was shocked by the whole thing. And then he said he goes to talk to Netanyahu, and within 1 or 2 minutes, he realizes, he tells him, you don't want a deal, do you? And which obviously the answer was no. He didn't want a deal, he wanted all of it. So that has to be also in his mind. Like, so he has to know that, despite of what he says and what he does, that is something that Trump on some level gets. So the rift between these two may be real, but I don't know if it affects anything in regards to what he's allowing Netanyahu to do. Because I agree with you. Netanyahu wants it all. He figures Trump is my guy. This is the chance that we have. Another president may not allow me to go this far. Let's do it.
I'm very skeptical about a rift. Very
Yeah.
skeptical. Very skeptical. I mean, yeah, there are going to be tensions, no doubt about it. U.S. and Israeli interests do not align completely, but there is the U.S.-Israeli partnership is very, very strong, especially in this part of the world.
Yeah.
Exceedingly strong. And the U.S. has consistently deferred to the Israelis, given them their lead, assured them a backup, and even as I said before, and then Gaza, Trump actually was actually more radical than Netanyahu. I mean, this idea of just completely cleansing Gaza, ethnically cleansing Gaza. This was Trump's idea, not Netanyahu's.
It's Joe Biden's idea also, by the way. If you remember, Joe Biden was trying to get Egypt and Jordan to take in the Palestinians from Gaza and from the West Bank.
When was that actually?
This was during the Biden administration, where Joe Biden was making inroads into Egypt. Egypt told him no. Jordan told him no, just like Egypt told Trump no, and Jordan told Trump no. I swear to God, I'm not lying to you. It just wasn't as loud.
Was it individuals or injured people or not the entire population?
He wanted to effectively, because Israel has an issue. Either they're going to kill all 2 million people, which seems very difficult to do, or you're going to expel those population. And they're confronted with that. And Joe Biden was confronted with that, especially after October 7th.
There's a third option. Slavery.
Apartheid, right?
Yeah, well, no, I don't mean slavery. I mean something approaching actual slavery. They're not going to buy and sell Palestinians, but they want to completely dismantle Hamas and then impose a kind of a monitoring system where they will the Palestinian population will be under the closest supervision possible for an eternity, living in poverty, living on under 24/7 monitoring. I mean, China has done something along these lines in Xinjiang, but this will be a thousand times more. Yeah. 1,000 times more. And I think that may be the option that Netanyahu is pursuing. But on the West Bank, though, the settler pogrom is intensifying, and I think that they're looking for a mass expulsion of some sort, or a mass expulsion, or just making life so miserable for the Palestinians that they eventually just leave or are completely and totally neutralized as well. I mean, it's an absolutely intolerable situation, but it looks like it's happening.
Well, Netanyahu's recent speech effectively made it clear that he wants all-out war. He wants to send people, his soldiers, back into Gaza, that the people won't be allowed back into the country or back into the area. Like that, and he said we need to find some other states to take them because we're not going to let them back in. So this seems to be their plan. I mean, when Witkoff, I would give them this. When Witkoff got the POW, the American POW back, and Witkoff talks to the hostage families and says something to the effect of, look, Netanyahu doesn't end the war. And there's no way to go with it, but he wouldn't end it, which is the reason why you can't get your people back. And there's talk about Trump going behind the scenes, talking to Hamas, sidelining Israel as it has talks with Hamas because it doesn't believe that they're going to end the war. And what, you got like 500 generals, intelligence coming out saying, hey, don't believe Netanyahu, help us end the war, help us create a sustainable peace lasting into the future. I mean, is the issue really just Netanyahu? I mean, I've been to Israel. There's a level of fascistic nature in that country that's not just Netanyahu. But is there, let's say, a groundswell of people, let's say, especially in leadership positions, that can see this is unsustainable? We can't keep doing this. We're a world pariah. This
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think that Netanyahu has got very solid political backing.
Support.
I think his position is very strong. The new Israeli commander in chief is a guy named Eyal Zamir. It's very, very interesting. The Israeli military used to be run by what they call the paratroop, the paratroop mafia. That the paratroopers are this elite military force, and they sort of dominated the military establishment, and they seem to favor very light, quick actions.
Wait, just be clear. You don't mean like jumping out of airplanes, paratrooper. You mean?
No, yeah. Israel has a paratroop unit, which is a very elite unit. It was plugged into all the power centers. You know, it's sort of known if you graduate from the paratroop corps, you were plugged into top military and business circles in Israel. That's just the way the country worked. But the new guy, Eyal Zamir, comes out of the armored forces. So he is a tank commander. And he is a Marshal Zhukov. You know who Marshal Zhukov was?
With the Russian
and so he believes in total warfare. He doesn't want to send in troops to engage with Hamas and then pull them back. He wants to send in troops to occupy territory and make sure that Hamas is totally expelled. And then bring in, as you know, the idea is to bring in U.S. companies to run food distribution, no longer the UNWRA, right. That essentially they'll use that as an instrument of political control, and they're starving the population now in order to reduce resistance to that idea. So Zamir wants to expel, clear, force out Hamas once and for all, completely eliminate them as a military threat. And that is the stage they are moving into. And I have little doubt that as to the support in Israel for that policy.
Wow. That's dark.
I wish I had different things to tell you, something else to tell you, but that is the way things are.
That's what it looks like.
I can tell.
I mean, what you were saying is exactly what it looks like. Like I said, I've been there. There's a visceral hatred. I give an example. When that video was released of those Israelis raping the Palestinian in the jail cell, and it started to be a debate in Israel over that video. And the majority of the population said, that's okay.
Listen, Jamal, it takes two to tango, okay?
It takes two to tango?
It takes two to tango. Hamas started a war it couldn't win. And now the Palestinians are paying the price.
I agree with you that
I think that Hamas is the worst third world force I have ever seen. They followed a strategy of mass martyrdom, not for themselves, but for the Palestinian people. In
I
fact,
know,
a guy named
but Daniel, you're ignoring the fact that for 70 years that they have been Hamas is exactly what Israel made them. Meaning, in the same way that you had slave revolts, in the same way that you had revolts, in any case, you had this kind of oppressive government. Israel has been putting these people in prisons. They've been beating, killing. Anytime they've had peaceful marches, they've been shooting. That last peaceful march that the Palestinians had, they were shooting people in the knees, stomach, and in the head.
and
I mean, this is
it was Hamas which herded them to the border, knowing what would happen. Hamas wants to create martyrs because it somehow believes this will lead it to win in the end. I mean, listen, Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood. These are not, Hamas is not some slave who suddenly just loses it and goes crazy.
I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not saying
this is an organized political force going back to the 1920s with a long history, a long body of ideology. They are a conscious political force. They embarked on this strategy, and they have essentially. And the Palestinians, as you're aware, that major anti-Hamas protests have erupted in Gaza.
Yeah.
Essentially, the people of Gaza, this is a Jonestown by the sea. I mean, and as you know, we know now that Jonestown was not a mass suicide. In other words, people with guns were standing by, forcing people to drink the Kool-Aid. And the Palestinian people never agreed to become martyrs. And they don't want to be martyrs now. They want to have a life of freedom and equality. But
they also don't want to be in an open-air ghetto. And they also have dealt with this notion of oppression going back for decades. I'm
absolutely.
saying, however bad Hamas is, I agree with you that it is a vicious political organization. We agree on that. I'm pointing out that, for one, they were voted in. Two, Palestinian Authority has zero credibility, meaning they hate Mahmoud Abbas's ass, and they hate him because he's effectively a collaborator with the Israeli government that is oppressing the people who are there. I'm saying the fastest boat that was moving, that was showing any level of opposition, was Hamas. And whether this was a fool's errand or not, fair enough, right? You've effectively given pretext for Israel to do what it wanted to do anyway. But let's be clear, though, Israel had been going on these bombing raids. They've been going on these mowing the grass, killing kids, throwing kids in prison, this level of oppression for 70 years. I'm trying to point out, what do you expect them to do? Just to accept the position that they're in, or to resist? And what do you think is going to take place when people are under that level of oppression for that long?
Well, those are all very good questions. First of all, I don't expect the so-called resistance to make things 1,000 times worse. I mean, as bad as they they now look like positively idyllic compared to what the brutal reality, the horrendous, intolerable, reality that the Palestinians are facing now. I think that, you said that Hamas was voted in. Yeah, it was voted in 2006.
Right.
They haven't had an election in 19 years.
Yes.
Its democratic mandate has faded, and the people were not consulted in this October 7th operation. And Hamas took a bad situation and made it 1,000 times worse. Now, I fully agree. I've been an anti-Zionist for better than half a century. Yeah. I fully agree that the situation that Israel imposes is intolerable. And Gaza had been the last, in contrast to the West Bank, Gaza had been unconquered. And the Gazans were very, very proud of the fact that that Israel could not enter their territory. And there were these crazy operations. Hamas would send out rockets or dig a tunnel. Israel would send in the F-16s, go back and forth, and that was obviously horrible, and hundreds of people died. And that's a crime.
Under Obama, it was like 2,200, 80% of which women and children.
It's horrible. But what's replaced it is infinitely worse. Yeah. You have a dance of death, and by the way, the Israel and there's a process of ideological convergence between Israel and Hamas. Because Smotrich and Ben Gvir, the two outright fascists, are really just have an identical Hamas, a Muslim Brotherhood ideology. Only you just switch, Moses for Muhammad, and that's it.
But what do you do? I've had this conversation with
what do you do?
Not Kincaid. What is his name? Kovalik. Because it's a box, right? Like I'll give you an example. Martin Luther King in the United States was like, okay, well, peace is a better option because we have more leeway in which to kind of make this argument, and you can use the moral force of the First Amendment and ideals of America as a way of pushing back in order to kind of show, look, we're getting killed, we're getting beaten. Is this really the country that you want? Meaning you could use a moral force in the U.S. to push your way to get more freedoms and liberties. That is not the situation they have in Israel or let's say in Gaza. I mean, you're talking about outright oppression. I've been there. I was in the West Bank. Like I went to Bethlehem, and I remember there was one space for people who were like Americans, could walk on through, and then you have a 3-hour line for Palestinians who are getting checked, like relentlessly checked, or on the bus where they pull the bus driver out because he didn't have the correct identification and put the guy in the truck and send the guys to jail. But they would go as an American, hey, they would speak perfect English. Mr. Thomas, if you wait right here, we'll have another bus for you in a moment. We apologize for the delay and blah, 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 blah. Like, meaning it is an obvious apartheid system in one case, and it is an obvious open air ghetto in another. And so if you are a Palestinian, you can't protest. That's not accepted. You could be thrown in a cage. You could be shot for throwing a rock. Meaning you're under direct oppression. What do you do? And as I was telling Kovalik, real quick, I was like, this clearly is worse. Like, meaning running a military campaign where you're attacking a military checkpoint, you end up killing a lot of people, civilians. Israel opens up a killing spree as a result of they would call it resistance. What do you do if that's what you end up with? I don't have an answer for it.
I met a guy once. His name was Mohammed Awad, if I recall correctly. This is the 1980s. Mm-hmm. He was a Palestinian American dentist. I think he moved somewhere in Ohio. Yeah. He loved America. So much freedom, so much equality, and he was especially a fan of Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
What a great man. He accomplished this all peacefully. And what a saintly character. I'm going to go back to Israel/Palestine, and I'm going to use Martin Luther King's tactics to mount a civil rights campaign. And it'll undoubtedly be just as successful as it was in America. He lasted 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
The Israelis got him out of there so fast. It was unbelievable. 2 weeks.
Precisely my point.
They solved the problem in a way the U.S. could not solve it, in the way George Wallace could not solve the problem. They just got him the hell out of there. And you're absolutely correct. And that was the worst thing they ever did. Because Mohammed Awad, I don't know where he is now. He's probably tearing his hair out somewhere in Ohio, beside himself with grief and wondering where it all went wrong. My heart goes out to him. But essentially Israel closed the door to peaceful change, but it had to. I mean, that is Zionist doctrine. Zionist doctrine is they want a Jewish state, and a Jewish state means a small, manageable, tame minority. They'll allow that, but can be no challenge to its power, and no resistance, and consequently, as things have gotten out of hand, the far right in Israel has grown, and you have the parallel growth of these two I don't know, semi-fascist, quasi-fascist, ultra-right forces on either side, dedicated to their mutual destruction, and the result is a dance of death. Now, you asked, what do we do?
What do you do? Like, I don't know what to do with that. It seems like
to me, the answer. This is gonna sound completely laughable, but I think it's actually true. The answer is socialism. I mean, essentially, as difficult as it is, we have to form an alliance between working people on both sides of the divide, and this seems completely far-fetched, but I would actually argue, and I have argued this in print, that Israel-Palestine is ground zero for the Middle East socialist revolution, that they actually have the most advanced proletariats in that part of the world, the most democratic proletariats, differentiating them from the governments in charge, and that they face the greatest barriers, which means that if those barriers can be overcome, then there's hope for the rest of the region. All through the Middle East, minorities are suffering horrendously.
Yeah.
A few hundred miles to the north, there are the Alawites,
Right.
more than 1,000 of which have been killed. Now, I mean, I don't know any Alawites. I know a little bit about their doctrine. I have no personal ties to the Alawite community. But I think it's horrifying to see thousands, more than 1,000 people killed in these circumstances. And the same with the Druze. And the Israelis, by the way, as you know, are making a bid for Druze loyalty. Yeah. And they actually may succeed. And so that's one Israeli strategy, and it may be successful. But all through the region, Berbers and Morocco and Algeria, et cetera, it is filled with these minorities who are severely oppressed, who are longing for freedom. And clearly, that's what the agenda is. That's what has got to be accomplished. We've got to create a socialist democracy which will secularize and create freedom for minorities, and allow people, Alawites, Druze, Berbers, Druze, Jews, Berbers, Christians, et cetera, to be carried on in peace. But that as the U.S., everybody involved is promoting the opposite.
Daniel, I got to be honest with you. It would have never occurred to me that the world community would have stood by and watched over 100,000 people get slaughtered and starved to death. And just to be clear, Hamas did a military campaign, almost like a prison break. And yeah, they kill civilians, fair enough. But if you look at this, Israel has killed, 100 times more than what Hamas did? And the world community has just stood and watched and not cared? That is astonishing to me as a response.
Look, October 7th, proportional to population, was equal to roughly 11, no more. It's like 15 9/11s. Okay. Yeah. So the U.S. went bonkers after 9/11. I argued against it, argued for a more temperate policy. I mean, obviously the war on terror was a huge expansion of U.S. imperialism.
I'm sorry to interrupt real quick though, but the difference is we were not occupying and basically subjugating those countries. Israel is.
But the U.S. was. The U.S. had essentially fostered an Islamist uprising in Afghanistan. It had brought decades of war to the Middle East. There plenty of reason for Muslims to hate America.
That is true. That is
right?
True. I guess I'm talking about like direct subjugation. I'm trying to make a distinction between they are like, meaning Hamas is what Israel made them, in the same way that, when those slave revolts, that those slaves and the revolt was based upon the fact that they were slaves. I'm trying to make this direct link between 70 years of subjugation, 70 years of imprisonment, of killing and mistreatment, crafted that almost like you're making a beer. It's complicated. I don't know.
I'm glad to bring up slavery because the U.S. saw a very small number of slave revolts.
Yes.
And it's even historians aren't even sure. The Denmark Vesey case, they're not even really sure whether it even was a revolt or it just was paranoia on the part of the slave owners. Slaves were waited and watched very carefully. And they were very strategic in their thinking. And they did not go out and engage in mass martyrdom. They waited until the Civil War broke out, and then they made their bid for freedom and joined the Union forces by the hundreds of thousands and provided the margin of victory for the Union. And they appeared to have won great advances for themselves. So they did think strategically and effectively. And I'm saying that's what you got to do. You've got to think long term, map out an effective strategy for yourself, and pursue it. That's all I'm saying, really. And Hamas has not done that.
That's not effectively what happened, is your point.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I'm leaving you with the last word. Daniel, I've deeply enjoyed this conversation. I really have. We've had a great crowd here also. Thank you for this, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very
Daniel
much.
Lazare, really fantastic conversation. We've had a damn good show today. Daniel Lazare is an independent journalist and author, best known as a critic of the U.S. Constitution, American politics, government, and social policy in general. He's written several books, including The Frozen Republic, The Velvet Coup, and America's Undeclared War. You can follow Daniel on Twitter. I'm not going to call it X, at DH Lazare. And you can find his column on theweeklyworker.co.uk and many other outlets.
Jamar, by the way, I no longer work for the Weekly Worker. I now publish at the, I'll send you an email later to clarify. I now publish at permanentrevolution.org and Democratic Constitution blog. So that's where we can find my stuff.
Permanentrevolution.org. God damn, that's strong. What is that, .com?
.com, not .org.
.org, okay.
And Democratic Constitution blog.
Okay. Thank you for this, man. I really appreciate it. Please send me that email so I can update my records.
Great. Thank you.
You have a good one. Be safe.
Thank you.
All right. Really interesting